services.
No, that was what would make it live, but it wouldn't even let me.
Oh, wait,
connect to it. It was like, you don't have
because I know
access.
one of
You
the
don't have
ones was getting the
access.
image up on
Is this a different laptop?
Sorry?
Is this a different laptop?
No. Why is it going so rapidly? I
It's
don't
moving a
know.
little bit more quickly than
I
this
know,
one.
we're just not even question it.
we turned it on.
I did open, Microsoft Outlook or Internet Explorer rather than Chrome, maybe. It's like faster to load because it's.
So maybe there's a- But anyway, it's there.
Okay,
Okay.
then I will call to order
The majority of what you were gonna wanna see is.
our regular monthly meeting
I
of
just wanted to.
the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. This is our annual organizational meeting, as well as we will be holding our public hearing for our tentative 2023-24 village budget. Are there any changes to the agenda? Any items to add or subtract? Hearing none, I will move on to our annual organizational meeting. These following appointments are subject to board approval, so I will read the slate of officers, the appointments therein, all the way down to the end of item B. I would then entertain a motion to accept those appointments. And then we'll move on to the rest of the organizational agenda where we will need to ratify standing policies. So mayoral appointments for the 2023-24 fiscal year include Deputy Mayor Carver, Police Trustee Commissions, Police Keith Hannon, Fire Marsha Horn, EMS Ben Carver, DPW Water and Sewer Ben Darfler, liaisons to outside organizations, myself and Ben Darfler will be liaisons to the Tompkins County Council of Governments. Myself and Jessica Giles as the alternate will be the directors on the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium. Marcia will be the village rep to Trumansburg Area Chamber of Commerce. We have a vacancy in need of filling at any time going forward on the Cuba Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization. Myself and Ben Carver are the two directors to the Three Falls Local Development Corporation. We have advisory committees consisting of Ben Darfler as chair of the Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Revision Committee, Ben Carver as chair of the Street Tree Advisory Committee, Keith Hannon as chair of the Events and Tourism Committee, and Keith again as chair of the Law Enforcement and Public Safety Committee. Appointed village officials are Jessica Giles as village clerk treasurer. This is a combination of the two positions. We previously had those positions combined for many years until 2005, when they were split into two distinct positions. I am recombining them for this following year. The two part-time positions, one of deputy clerk and the other of deputy treasurer, will be filled simultaneously by Jennifer Schlossberg. Records management officer is Jessica Giles. Police records access officer is Chief Nelson. Our budget officer as treasurer is Jessica Giles. Our receiver of taxes and deputy receiver of taxes as clerk and deputy clerk are Jessica Giles and Jennifer Schlossberg. Code enforcement and zoning officer will be Tom Myers. Fire inspection officer is Tom Myers. Our village attorney remains Guy Crow of Thaler and Thaler. Our official bank and depository is the Tompkins Community Bank. Our official newspapers are the Ithaca Journal, Trumansburg Free Press, and Tompkins Weekly. Our village historian is Sandy List. Our youth commission consists of Keith Hannon, and did we have someone else?
No, sorry.
We have two positions for delegates to the youth commission, one of which is filled by Keith Hannon and the other is vacant. If anyone is interested, please let me know. And our village arborist is David Allen. On the planning board, our chair remains Rick Geiger, Joe Kuchar as a member, John Alberg as a member, Mark Devakaitis as a member, and accepting a reappointment to another 5-year term is Michelle Matrani. We do have vacancies in two alternate positions. Our ZBA consists of Tim Hamilton as the chair. Members are Noah Demarest, Michael Schlossberg and Peter Meskel, and we do have a vacancy, and I do want to take a moment to thank Phil Carubia for many years of service on the ZBA. He has chosen to not renew his, I offered to renew his appointment to the ZBA, and he has chosen to take a break from public office. And so I want to thank Phil for his many years of service. And as well, we have 2 vacancies for the alternate positions on the ZBA. I am hoping to have the permanent position, the 5-year term position filled within the next few weeks. And then last but not least, we have our marriage officers, which is myself as mayor and Ben Carver as deputy mayor. And if any other village trustee really wants to marry anyone, let me know, and we can always appoint you as a marriage officer as well. And so with that, I would entertain a motion to accept the full slate of officers as presented.
So moved.
Any questions, conversation, discussion, objections to any of the positions?
My position on the youth commission is not listed. I think, I forget exactly what we call it, youth commissioner. I believe it's what it's been historically. But the board liaison to the youth commission.
So the youth commission. What is that position? So the Keith's in there, but not as a trustee.
So Keith is in as a community rep, yeah.
And then there's a vacancy there, because I know there are other village members, my brother's on it. Is that not part of this?
That is,
Or
it is not, you know, he misses one meeting, and all of a sudden my brain just falls apart.
so is he the other?
He is the other one.
Okay,
Yes. My God, thank you, Ben.
no worries.
Okay, so we are amending the. We are amending the slate of officers to include a couple of oversights. One is Ben Carver as our youth commission liaison, and then Michael Darfler, apologies, as the other youth commission community representative. Any other edits? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the slate of officers as amended, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, second portion of our organizational meeting consists of, first, we have meeting dates. Beginning with our second meeting of this month, April 24th, we have 2 meetings a month, second and 4th Mondays. There are 2 blank dates, which we will address when we get closer to those dates. Jessica, if you want to make a note, the October meeting date, we always have to reschedule as it is. The second Monday is Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day, and the second meeting in December, which we may just choose to cancel, actually falls on Christmas this year. So we can address those when we get to Labor Day-ish.
Okay.
Pages 3 and 4 consist of meeting protocols, which have not changed, including the taking of minutes, our order of business. Page 5 talks about the Freedom of Information Law, advanced approval of claims, village board members' attendance at schools and conferences. Page 6 is our shared public works service agreements and our procurement policy, which again has not changed in quite some time, actually. The procurement policy goes for several pages, and last but not least, on page 10 is a reference to our investment policy, which is available in the back of the agenda as Appendix A. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the last portion of our organizational agenda, including policies as written.
Second.
Second.
Any questions, conversation, comments? Desired edits?
My only thought, not that I desired it, but maybe just to start a conversation, we can mull over this one year. I wonder if at some point our contracts, the dollar values for the purchase contract. Procurement policy piece might want to go up at some point. Everything is getting more expensive. I think there are limits at state level, so, but I don't think we're at them, so. Just a thing to consider. I don't have a proposal.
Yeah, certainly we're looking at, I thought about that. We haven't revised this since April of 2009. So it's certainly worth considering. Maybe it might even be worth having the department heads take a look at the limits and see when we blow into them. Any other questions, comments?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, if there are no other questions, comments, or edits, all in favor of adopting the remainder of the organizational policy portion of the agenda as presented, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving right along to item number 4 on our agenda is our public hearing for our 2023-24 budget. There is a copy of it in the Dropbox. We have one printed copy if anybody wants to look at it. And it is, of course, available online. And so I would, I guess before we open the public hearing, I'll just editorialize briefly we're certainly not going to work line by line through this budget. We've done that over several meetings this spring. But the bottom line that folks always are interested in is that the tax rate will remain flat at $7.25 per 1,000. I believe this is the 5th year. I have to go back and double check, 4th or 5th year where it's remained at that number. Spending has increased somewhat, and in fact, spending has increased by 7%. But due to increasing assessments and increased property values, we do not have to raise the tax rate, at least not this year. And so with that, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on the 2023-24 budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we are in our public hearing for our 2023-24 budget. If there's anyone either in person or online who has any questions about the budget, please feel free.
I
Yes.
have a question. I can't tell. I can't see the room, so I don't know if anybody is ahead of me.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for all the work on the budget. I know it takes a lot of work. But my question is, I know you're keeping the village tax rate, the rate the same, but everybody's assessments went up. Most people's assessments went up 10% last year, and they went up another 10%, and which means our taxes are going up 10%. So that just does not seem sustainable at that rate. Our taxes increase will double like every 7 years or something. And, the difficulty I've had is that, we moved to Trumansburg 20 plus years ago. Our village taxes were roughly half of the county and town taxes. Now, village taxes are more than the county and town taxes. And if we keep going with these 10% increases every year, we'll be, another 20 years, our village taxes will be more than the school taxes. So it just doesn't feel sustainable. So I guess I'm just expressing that concern and, asking, do you think that, will the new development help lessen the burden on us? We must have an estimate of how much tax revenue we're going to get from that development. So that's my question. I'm just concerned, not speaking just for myself, but for all the people around me that I talk to. It seems like it's going to make Trumansburg a really expensive place to live at this rate. That's it.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we don't have anyone else unless the gentleman has something he wants to add. So I'll take the time to respond. You're 100% correct. Everything you said was 100% correct. Were you in attendance at the State of the Village?
Yes, I was. Well, I didn't go. I watched, I think, after the fact.
Okay. You know, State of the Village, we discussed this, and the reality is Trumansburg's already getting to be a pretty expensive place to live. And we will eventually come to a place where we will either have had some increase in the tax base one way or another, or we will have to have a very painful conversation about what essential services that we offer are we no longer going to offer. That's what I call the math problem, right? The math is what it is, and there isn't a way to bend the so-called cost curve on some of these things. And so we either offer the services or we don't. In terms of development like 46 South Street or anything else, yes, any new build will have an assessment attached to it, and that will generate property tax revenue. Whether it's going to be enough to really make a dent, that's where opinions differ. I'm of the opinion that it will make a dent, but we won't know until we actually are there. And I don't know if that helps or makes it more painful.
Well, I mean, it helps a little bit, but the budget's very detailed and it's a little hard to follow for a layperson. But one thing I noticed, it looks like the police department might be we might be adding another person to that, and I'm kind of wondering, like, with all due respect to the police, I love the Trumansburg Police. I've had minimal interaction with them, but they've always been very helpful, and I really appreciate them. But are we adding another person, and do we really need to add another person to the village police force if the village is basically the same size as it was, say, a year ago or 2 years ago?
So that again, you'll get different opinions based on who you ask. If you're very curious about it, I would have you have a conversation with Chief Nelson about it. We have gone from a system where we had a dozen or more part-time officers, and we're essentially replacing that system with full-time officers for a number of reasons, including reliability of scheduling. There have been instances in the past where the handful of criminal investigations that we get every year are slowed down by not having full-time officers to see through the investigation from start to finish. Criminal investigations, generally, you don't see something handed off from one person to another. It's followed through by the same officer. And then I'm happy to discuss this offline at some point if you're interested, Scott. There has been a significant shift over the last 2 to 3 years in the, shall we use the word strain? I don't really want to use that word, but I'm failing to think of a better one, on the department with respect to resources from the county that should be available to supplement our hours, due to the fact that the sheriff's department's manpower and responsibilities have significantly shifted in a different direction geographically. And I don't want to open up a can of worms that I've already gotten in trouble for over the last couple of years in print, but the reality is the village of Trumansburg is often the only police agency with officers available in this area, depending on what's happening to our south. And so just from a dynamic, and this really applies to EMS as well, from a dynamic, emergency services are dynamic, they're not fixed. DPW is fixed, emergency services are not. And so there has been some movement in that direction. But really, whether it's police or EMS is the big one. EMS is, this year's budget is, I think, 1.3 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. Out of a total budget of 3 million. So that's the, as departments go, that's the big one. And that has everything to do with the geography that the department covers. And of course, we get revenue from the towns with which we contract. But that's the one that scares me if we're talking about budget issues, EMS, the growth of the EMS department runs double digits basically over the last, 12, 13 years. It's averaged 11 to 13% annual growth just in that one department. Police, we see a jump because we're adding a third full-time position, but year over year, it doesn't grow more than a few percent as we allocate raises to payroll. Same thing with DPW. Same thing with front office staff. Thankfully, fire is still all volunteer, but EMS is the big one. So broadly speaking, Scott, not to belabor the point, we have found ourselves in a position where we are the regional resource, not we're the only one, the regional resource for certain emergency services, and there's no one to take our place. And so that gets into all the other conversations I try to have with folks about state funding and state assistance and those kinds of things. But without an increase to our property tax base and without assistance from New York State in other ways, we will find a time in the future. And this isn't even meant to be scary. It's just a matter of fact. We will find ourselves at a point in time in the future where it will either be too expensive for a lot of folks to live here, or we will have to decide what we don't want to offer. Still not making you feel any better.
Thank you. No, it's a good answer. Thank you, Roden. I'm not sure if it really, helps the cause, but at least it explains it well. But I think you're going to get a lot of pushback over time with these 10% increases every year, because there'll be another one next year. We've all just got a new assessments, unless you lower the tax rate, the per thousand anyway.
Right. Yeah, I think unfortunately where we're going to find ourselves, well, obviously we have nothing to do with assessments. That's Tompkins County, but part of what I talked about at the State of the Village is we're going to find ourselves within the next year or two with 10% assessment increases and increases to the tax rate. And again, that's unless there's a significant increase to the property tax base in terms of number of units of housing. But even that, and again, not to get off on a tangent, but when we talk about the proposed zoning changes, what are we really talking about as a likely scenario? A 10% increase to the housing stock in a decade? That would seem like a lot. But at 10%, if our depending on the value of those homes, a 10% increase in the housing stock will make a difference to the property tax base. But we're not talking about the kind of change that's going to cut our tax rate in half or even by a quarter. So it needs to be something that's done on a more continual basis. We need to see consistent property tax base growth over the next 30 years in conjunction with assistance from New York State on certain items, particularly emergency services, in order to allow for folks who want to live here, frankly, until folks who want to die here, create a situation where those folks will be able to stay. Otherwise, and everybody, Skinny Atlas is a beautiful village. I'm not criticizing them for where they are geographically or how they choose to operate their government. But I don't think the village of Trumansburg wants to be Skinny Atlas in the sense of how expensive and how exclusivist it has become. And so we have to try to do as much as we can around the margins to try to avoid that very expensive future.
Just one other question, since I'm the only one asking them.
Sure.
I think if I read it right in the budget, it looks like the appropriations revenue, the budget from the tax revenue increased by 7.65%, if that's the number I remember correctly. Does that make sense? There's a line item in the revenue.
7.56, right? So that'll be the increase to the levy.
Right.
Which to your point that's the dollars we're raising from property taxes, but because everyone's assessments have increased, it doesn't affect the rate.
But shouldn't theoretically, if everybody's went up 10%, then the rate should drop a little bit. I mean, the rate per thousand, if it's only 7.5%, if you only need a 7.5% increase in the levy, shouldn't the rate drop a little bit?
But not everyone's went up by 10%, I think is the difficulty. So I think most is, it's certainly common, but it's not universal.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and then there's people that bought houses probably and get assessed at a higher rate than it was assessed before. I know there's a bunch of changes, but yeah, it seems like it's, it shouldn't be exactly flat. It seems like there should be a little adjustment there somehow. Just like the village or the county and the town and the school, they'll increase their spend, they'll adjust their tax rate based on the assessment base.
Right, so we could adjust our tax rate down if we were to cut some spending somewhere. The 7.56, well, let's round up, let's call it 7.6, does come from the fact that the overall village property tax base, the overall village assessments went, and I don't have let me see if I can find my other spreadsheet here, Scott.
Well, theoretically, they would have had to go, if you're keeping the rate exactly flat, then they would have gone up 7.56%. Exactly.
Not necessarily, because we are also appropriating dollars from our fund balance to keep the rate flat.
Yeah, okay, got it.
So if we did not appropriate any money from our fund balance, you would see the levy go up 10%. Or
Okay,
whatever.
yeah, that piece I didn't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the total assessment increase was village-wide, you would see the levy go up by that same amount, which would increase the rate. But by applying fund balance to keep the rate flat, you see the levy affected.
Got it.
As presented.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you. I'm done with my questions. Thank you, Gordon. That was very good.
Thanks, Scott.
Explanations.
Any other public comment on our tentative budget? Going once. Going twice. And I would entertain a motion to close our public hearing on the tentative 23-24 village budget. No. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I have one question to follow up on the police side. I don't know if we know this. Do we feel like 3 full-time officers is kind of a stable configuration? I know we've been in this place where we've had 2, we've had a lot of part-time, the part-time has been working out. I don't know if we know if 3 feels relatively stable or if there's still a question as how reliable we can be with the part-timers we still need to fill in, if that question makes sense.
Yeah, question makes sense. So I don't know that we will know until we have 3 full-time officers. I will say that the budget, the budget adds that 3rd full-time officer in December. So it's a half year of a 3rd full-time. Just the chief isn't sure when he's going to find someone that he likes for that position. And we have potential for picking up a couple more part-timers that he's been talking to, and we have one to talk about later in executive session. So if it turns out that we end up with some more reliability on the part-time staffing, then that just pushes out the timeline for a need for the 3rd officer.
My thought there is that, it's obviously more expensive to go with a full-time person, there's benefits and so forth. But it's not like we're gonna add a new full-time person every couple of years. But we've been in a spot where we've done that for a couple, 3 years. So I think it's just interesting context that like when you look at the police line in particular, it's not like we're always gonna continue to see this. I mean, I hope that we continue to see this growth continuing over time. I think we're gonna get to a kind of stable configuration, hopefully to 3 full-time engineers. So a day job, full-time police officers. And we'll see that. The EMS thing is scarier because it doesn't feel like there's a way to kind of like put a cap on that per se. But I'm gonna have questions depending on how much we can support our neighbors outside of our coverage area at some point here.
So the police department issue is basically getting consistency.
Right, and
Right.
just for context for anyone either watching now or who watches this back, when we say 3 full-time officers, we don't mean that there are 3 officers on shift at any one time.
No.
What we mean is we have coverage throughout the week. It's actually not a 24-hour day coverage, but we don't disclose which hours there are no police officers on. And there's generally 1 officer on duty at any time. And so we can staff all those hours with part-timers, or we can staff them with a combination of full-time and part-time. With 3 full-time police officers on payroll, we can staff almost the entire week when we have an officer on, with at least 1 officer, with 3 full-time officers, and then we'll need to piecemeal a part-timer in here and there. If we're able to have that, if you want to think of it as that 3rd shift staffed consistently with part-timers, then that certainly is better from a budget standpoint. If those part-timers are, one of the other advantages to full-time officers, which I didn't mention when I was answering Scott's question earlier, is the community interaction piece is certainly much better with a full-time officer. It's the same person, it's the same face. If you have a dozen part-timers filling in that quote unquote 3rd shift, then maybe they all get to know the community as well. But logically, there's going to be some of those officers who just, maybe they only work 2 shifts a month, so they just don't get to know everyone quite as well. But yeah, to your point, I think Chief has done a good job of trying to delay from a budget standpoint the hiring of that 3rd, and we may be able to, knock on wood, push it off for another year based on some of the things he and I have been talking about, and we'll talk about later. But at some point, I think it's going to be it.
I mean, the flip side is if we're budgeting for half of that person for this budget year, and we find that person, then that will be more next year, but then we can see if we can hold ourselves to that line, at least on that budget.
And EMS is scary. I mean, there's just nothing about it that isn't. And that's why you have the county involved now. That's why we have a new position created at Tompkins County, position of EMS program manager. That's why the conversations are being had between, CMC is operating the ambulance for Schuyler County on Schuyler Hospital. I mean, everything's moving because everyone knows it's expensive and not getting any better in terms of cost structure.
Scott, we're gonna have a resolution here later on. You can write your own version of it and send it to all your elected representatives.
Yes.
Anything else budget related from the board?
I would like to point out that there was some public comment received that's in the Dropbox. It was received today, which was after the requested time in the public hearing notice, but it is in there. It's general
Okay.
comment, just to make sure that's in the record.
Okay. Well, if there are no other comments or questions, then
I think actually, I will quickly just say, I don't want to belabor this, I can make this argument repeatedly. But I just want to say, since we've talked about it now for 20 minutes, I do not agree with the increase in budget for the police department. I think on the EMS side, we are trying, I think, to optimize operations as much as we can. Efforts are being made, and we'll see if they're fruitful. I think there's more room to do that on the police side than has been done. I'll leave it there. I don't want to belabor it. We've all sort of said our piece. I've said that a million times already, but I just want to note now in this context that's where I fall on it. And quickly, I considered very briefly not voting for this budget for that purpose, but that felt extreme. I think by and large, this budget is absolutely the best we could do, and it doesn't feel worth standing against the rest of the budget for such a sort of narrow piece. So that felt more extreme than I wanted to do. So I will be voting for the budget, but just noting my objection to that one line.
Okay. Then on that note, and without further ado, I would entertain a motion to adopt the tentative 2023-2024 budget as presented.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any additional questions, conversation, or otherwise? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Terrific. So we have a budget. Which brings us to item number 5, which is our first public comment period. If any member of the public would like to say anything? No? Scott, anything else?
No, I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for your answers and all the work you guys did in the budget and all the other stuff you guys do for the village. And I'll see you at Garrett's soon.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
And we'll move right along to item number 6, which is reports from representatives. And I see that we have Ann with us.
Hi there. Just got
How are
a
you?
couple
Good.
quick updates. We hired our homeless coordinator, which is a new position. And because as you probably know, at least we see it more down in Ithaca, but there's homelessness, in every community throughout the county. So we hired a homeless coordinator to be full-time to really try and take a bite out of that issue. And we are also looking at building a new center of government. We've been talking about it on and off for a couple of years, but it's been coming up a lot more lately. So the state we're at now is we're doing the number of steps we need to do to get there. And it's as you know, with big projects, there's quite a lot of number of steps. So I'll update you periodically on that. And that's about all I have right now. And Rorden, I don't know if we wanted to talk about the Community Recovery Fund, but I could update the board on that if you want.
Please do.
So we had for our Community Recovery Fund at the county that we've been doing, we had awarded all the grants, but one organization, it fell through. So we have 510,000 and that's left over that we're trying to figure out how to reallocate that. And we're starting with the folks that were at the top of the list previously in our kind of bucket that we had narrowed it down to before. So there's 13 or 14 of those that were still left when we triaged the list before. And as legislators, we're allowed to put one back into that bucket. Each of us are allowed to put one. And I represent actually small part of the town of Ithaca also, but I represent 1/3 of Enfield and then all of Ulysses. And luckily, Randy Brown, the legislator for Newfield and the southern part of Enfield, has agreed to put one of the Enfield ones back in the bucket. And I talked over the weekend, which I appreciate, Supervisor Olson for the town of Ulysses, and I appreciate the Mayor Hart talking with me over the holiday weekend. And I decided to nominate the one that overlaps with the village and the town, and that's for their summer camp program for kids. So that's the one I decided on. It's a hard decision, but I hope folks are okay with that.
Thanks, Ann. Any questions or comments for Ann? Thank you much.
Thank you.
Item number 7, Mary joins us later. We'll come back to her. Item number 7 is our consent agenda. We have meeting minutes galore. We have meeting minutes from February 13th, February 16th, February 22nd, March 13th, and March 27th. As well as we have our abstract, which consists of a general fund abstract in the amount of $359,518.16. We have a water fund abstract, which I don't have totals for.
Did it not total?
No, those are the general fund totals.
Scroll down.
Do you have a print copy by chance?
I don't. I can only open the Dropbox. What's a total? Maybe that's the fault of printing it as one document.
Actually, I want to review it.
We're just not at the mercy of that.
No, I can just go scroll to the bottom and read it. Okay, so general fund. Okay, general fund abstract. Let me restate. General fund abstract totals $302,317.10. Water fund abstract totals $11,961.30. Seems low. Sewer fund abstract totals $24,136.63. And trust and agency totaling $21,103.13. And no EMS billing in this batch. And so I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes and the abstract of claims as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
I had a couple very minor edits in the minutes.
In the minutes.
They're very.
Adding your name back in. Just one. Okay.
No. My name is.
Okay, so the abstract is approved.
Then if there are no other questions, then all in favor of approving the meeting minutes as amended and the abstract as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 8. Board reports. My only update is that the Three Falls Local Development Corporation is an official entity as of a few weeks ago. That is the local development corporation, not-for-profit, that the town of Ulysses, town of Covert, and village of Trumansburg are combining to form, or have combined to form, to then negotiate with New York State Parks the management of the property currently known as Camp Barton. We held our organizational meeting for that organization last week. Next steps will include a lot of housekeeping, federal tax ID number, federal not-for-profit filing statuses, and so on. And then we will begin the process of conversations with Parks as with respect to their licensing agreement, what we will be obligated to do, and what Parks will either allow or not allow us to do with the property. So more to come on that. And that's it for me for the moment. So I'll hand it off to Marcia, Fire and Trumansburg Area Chamber.
I'm gonna turn this over to Matt because we had, because the fire truck specs are in, so he can explain that if anybody has any questions. Joel has a $5,000 grant to spend on energy efficiency, so he's been working with Matt to talk about upgrading the lighting system for the building, so you can go ahead, Matt, and explain a few of those things.
All right, Matt Taylor, Trustees Fire Department Fire Chief. So we have worked on the specs for the new heavy rescue, slated to be replaced. That replacement would happen sometime in 2025, in the way it takes to build trucks now. And we're looking for a referendum of 900,000 to replace that truck. The budget money should be there in that amount of time, at the current pace of reserve dollars going in from the budget. Might stress further purchases a little bit, but it'll cover this one at this point. The truck will be another KME. It's a little bit bigger than the current truck, much more capacity to haul stuff. Roughly the same size compartment longer, so it's about 6 feet longer than the current truck. But it'll have firefighting capability. It'll hold all of our road rescue equipment, the new Jaws of Life, the HERS tools that were purchased through the fundraiser that we did last year, and a plethora of other tools and things that probably for most people. So we don't see any decrease in our capabilities with this truck, so I don't see where it would hamstring us. We had a committee about 7 or 8 people, myself, a couple other officers and some members. Sitting down, we spent about 4 Saturdays working this truck. It came in initially, the off south of $1 million. We went back through it, combed out some of the stuff that was our wish list items, and keep another hard look. I think we're going to be slightly south of 900,000. Say 810, well, it's probably going to be like 880 or 885, somewhere in there. As you can imagine, it is taking us quite a while for pricing to come through. So we repriced that truck, repricing about 3.5 weeks ago. I guess might get it tomorrow. So we're kind of running on, I don't want to say a whim, but we are making some judgment calls on the actual price of the truck based on what we know, what the salesperson can bring through for us, and then what the factory actually has to reprice for us, because we changed the design of the truck slightly, so they have to go back in and re-engineer it and reprice it. So that takes some time. That's where we stand on the truck at this point. So delivery is about 28 months ish, give or take. Speed up as in the last 3 years. It's got a little bit better, used to be closer to 3 years. Now we're about 2.5, 2.25 years. So looking at the reserve budget here just a few minutes ago, it looks like by May of 25, it should be right around $1,002,000 in the reserve account. So should be cash purchase.
Do I recall correctly that they need the permissive referendum approval to start, but they don't need the money until delivery?
Right, once we make the order, now you can get a discount if you pay ahead, but you know how that.
It's not getting carried away, man.
Just a second. No, I think once we order the truck and the contracts are signed, that holds the price tight for the duration of the build. And they don't need approval, they just need to sign a contract. So I guess it's up to you guys if you want to order prior to the vote on the rest of the permissive referendum or not.
When is payment due? Is it the kind of thing where there's installments? One.
No,
last
payments
on the
due on
delivery?
delivery of the truck. So they hand you the keys, you hand on the check. But you, like I said, there is incentive programs to pay early. I would say.
This is 1802.
Correct. Maybe 24 years old by the time I get it.
And And you're thinking we could get 100,000 for the other truck?
Yeah, we'll see what the market does, but the price of trucks today, prior to COVID and the length of time that it gets one, that it takes to build a unit, there's probably plenty of fire departments out there that are confident that they to buy a truck. They don't have to wait for it.
Any other questions for Matt?
I'm gonna speak to energy too much.
Yeah, that would be great.
So Joel, and you guys have any questions about the truck or on the line? Energy efficiency, so, last month, I think, Mark brought forward replacing the drops. With each truck and the ambulances, we've had some problems with that over the past few years. I don't know if Joel's mentioned it. Once in a while, we find those cords are tripped off, kills the batteries in the truck, trucks don't start, not a good thing. So, we hired John Mills to come in and do that work. They're in the process of getting everything around so they can do it in one fall swoop. Joel and I had a conversation a couple of months ago, that there was some grant money dollars available up to $5,000 for energy efficiency upgrades to the station. Him and I kind of put our heads together, and usually lighting, in my experience, is always the low hanging fruit. Many years ago, probably 15 years ago now, Jason had the lighting replaced to T5s. Used to be incandescent bulbs back in the day. And looking at those, I went up and looked at them, they're 52 watts per bulb. There's 4 to 6 bulbs per light, about 250 watts plus the driver. So you're probably 300 watts per light. We're going to replace those, propose to replace those with in-kind 2x4 fixtures that are 85 watt LED units. That would cover the price that Marcia has all there. Does the entire ground floor of the building. So does the apparatus bay, does the catwalk area by the ready room, does the meeting room, does all of the ancillary spaces in between, and some of the storage out back as well. So I think Joel did mention that he wants some kind of written thing about the energy efficiency, and I'll work with John Mills on that. As far as dollars saved or mileage saved, or however you guys need it, I'm broke out, it's fine to get.
So the handy piece for us is just to know what the payback period is. So what we're saving versus what we're spending. And just for background, this is the NYSERDA grant that I think Ben mostly got for work last year. I mean, I had to apply for it, but it was all based on work that you had done. So that is what's setting us off. But thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, no problem. Marcia has all the.
Yeah, I think it was like 13,600 quoted, and then the grant was 5,000, so it leaves $8,600. And that would come out of the station maintenance line.
Okay.
There was a program that we went through for getting LED lights in the village. That I feel like they help cover some of the cost or do something. I'll send you the details.
NYSERDA.
And it was through NYSERDA.
Nice. So usually you can pick a NYSERDA or a NYSERDA.
Okay.
That's just because they're all pulling from the same system that they charge.
Yeah.
The dollars are at the state level and they distribute them to
So
their entity. But that has always been my past experience.
This grant should be completely separate from those monies. So it may,
There's something different.
maybe,
Okay,
maybe.
let's take a look at it. At least-
yeah,
First it says,
right, I'll pull up what I remember having, because I'm pretty sure we even got a quote for the firehouse at the time. And we decided it was more than we wanted to be in for, but we've got some grant funding.
That sounds familiar to me.
I'll pull some things together and send it to you.
perfect.
What was that dollar amount on the lights?
13,600.
13,600.
And we need to approve how much?
8,600.
Well, I think you gotta approve all, right?
Well, yeah,
Well, we actually have the money. The fact that the grant has already been paid to us, it's just waiting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So that just approve this.
yeah, but yeah.
Okay, any other questions from Matt? Then Marcia, are you making a motion to spend up to $13,600?
On the LED upgrade lighting system, yes.
That's a motion.
That's a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second. Or,
Any other questions or comments?
Conversation.
Thanks.
Yes.
There are no other questions or comments. All in favor, please say aye.
Bye.
1802, what's the dollar number you want to approve? Okay, so Marcia, are you making a motion?
Motion to.
Approve that in the center.
Yeah,
The appropriating up to $900,000 for the purchase of a heavy rescue. Scheduled for delivery in roughly 2025, subject to permissive, from the fire
for reserve.
apparatus reserve, subject to permissive referendum. Is that your motion?
Yes, that's my motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or conversation?
I remember when I started on fire and where we said at some point we got an apparatus over $1 million. This is the first time we've had one come through this amount of money. You're right, it's a lot to say yes to.
We're gonna have to redo my replacement schedule based on like a new inflation calculus. I'm really.
Yeah.
I just made a note for myself to revise the replacement cycle that I just looked at 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ladder truck was $750.
Ladder truck and one dollar.
Next month, 1.5.
Good time.
We could say that.
Any other?
That's what you wanted today.
Right.
I mean, I think it is important to say that we do budget for this. We have been putting money away forever for this. This is in some ways a sign of how well we've been doing to be able to even talk about buying in cash, which is, interesting in and of itself. So for anyone that's listening or, see this later, we are planning for it, and it's still getting a lot more, but we need to keep planning.
Yeah, actually, thank you for pointing that out, because we are trending towards a very flippant conversation, and it is worth looking after that.
Yeah.
It's big numbers, and I think we are flippant because we talk about this all of the time, and so when it actually comes up.
Yeah, it's still, even knowing that we have been planning for years, it's still like, whoa, it's a big number.
We did talk about the rope rescue equipment or something, now that that's coming to my
You didn't write that down.
attention. I just noticed in my notes, yes,
How much was that?
$8,084. So when they were at,
That too.
yeah,
We're still on the fire truck.
oh, okay, oh, I'm sorry.
Any other questions or comments on 1802? Okay, so we have a motion and a second for appropriating up to $900,000 from the fire apparatus reserve for the purchase of a heavy rescue, subject to this referendum.
Actually, I don't even know.
Yep.
Is that, we don't have that in there now. Is that we're like barely, you're saying as we're kind of doing this, getting ahead of ourselves.
It was in the replacement schedule.
Yeah.
Right, I think what I was
Dollars are
saying-
not in the bank.
Right,
right, this is kind of planning on where we will be, because.
Oh,
everything-
where we will be by the time it's delivered, right?
Right, but I don't know what the.
That was all that.
Don't think so, because we mentioned the anticipated delivery date in the resolution.
No,
That would be my layman's defense if
Yeah.
anyone.
and because we're not actually paying anything, that we are encumbering an amount of money to say that it's set aside over here. And that could be sales wise.
Right, we're approving the purchase price based on the delivery date. 2
Yeah.
budget cycles from now.
Yeah,
Should we actually should we add authorizing you to sign the contract? Because it sounds like that's the critical piece, right? Having a signed
We
contract.
don't have a contract, but he's still getting quotes, so when we get the contract
And
back,
this is finalized, okay.
yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Anything else on fire truck? Hearing, go.
Well, no, but if you, that's 30 days for people to apply to permissive referendum, so you can get the contracts while we're waiting for that. Thank you.
And then, if there are no other questions or comments, all in favor of the resolution, permissive referendum resolution as dictated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, road rescue,
Yes, rope rescue. So they're looking to,
it's turning into an expensive nightmare.
yes, it is. I said, so they're ready to spend some money. So I guess, what Matt was saying was they, could use some new tech and rope rescue capabilities so that they could get to higher angles. Apparently it came to, that one car accident rescue that you did, you said you found that you didn't have really,
Right, there's equipment that we recognized after that, debriefing of that car wreck on 89. That there was capabilities that we were lacking as far as equipment. So, myself, Dan Shear, help of some other folks around the community helped, put this list together. So it's 8,000 and change. It kind of takes us to the next level of rope rescue. We've always been a low angle rope rescue team. We've got about 6 people that are now technically trained in rope rescue that can do high angle, so we could go over the gorge if we had to. And this equipment really allows us to kind of bring that whole process home. So the biggest piece of that whole thing is what we call in Arizona, which is a high point. It's aluminum poles to stick up. They're meant to hold people, so they are pricey. It's $5,000 for that set. Everything else is just kind of more rope, gainers, harnesses, helmets, all kinds of a culmination of equipment. And I think you have it all I sent to you.
yeah, 8,000, 80, yeah. I got a new computer, so I didn't get
How
up in
much?
there yet. $8,084.
$1,084.
$8,084, and half of it,
Yeah, we're gonna split it.
yeah, half of it come out of the equipment line
Evenly?
and half, yeah,
Yeah, it's not 2, and I think.
What's the other?
and the other half is out of the small equipment line.
And I'm sorry, that quote is in Dropbox? Or will
No,
it?
it will be,
Okay,
I didn't get a chance to
okay,
put it in there yet.
okay.
And making it.
Yeah, so I'd like to make the resolution and put forward for $8,084 up to $8,084 for the rope rescue equipment, high angle rope rescue equipment, half coming out of the equipment line and half coming out of the small equipment.
Second. A motion and a second. Any questions?
I think it's phenomenal that we have so many people willing to do it. It's really an exceptional thing, and I think we should all be very.
And that are trained to do it, yeah, it's just amazing, the
That's
training is, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, anything else for fire? Yeah. That's light enough.
That's it, that's enough money to spend.
Anything for, thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Anything for T-Bird Chamber?
No, nothing for T-Bird Chamber, other than they had their dinner, I had a previous thing that prevented me from going, but the library got the business of the
Organization.
organization of the year, and Our farmer's market head got distinguished, so that was nice.
And Sundries was the business.
Yes, and Sundries was the business, yeah.
Okay, great. EMS Youth and Street Tree Advisory Committee.
I'll do my best to keep it quick. But for EMS, all numbers, town of Covert 11, town of Hector 3, village of Interlake 5, city of Ithaca 3, town of Ithaca 3, Mecklenburg 8, town of Ovid 3, village of Ovid 1, village of Trumansburg 16, Ulysses 17. Total of 71 calls. So we are trending right around 1,000 calls. We're not, for a little while there, we were in scary territory. We were just going below our historic call percent water. We are now back towards just reasonably high. So that is something. At this point, I'll take it. Outside of that, for EMS, I do have one employee related possible hire to discuss executive session. I don't have anything really on the youth commission other than that we're sort of still in the same position as before. We are negotiating a contract with CCE that is going really well. CCE has been very accommodating, very happy to talk about it. County has been very helpful. The pieces are, the contract itself hasn't fallen into place, but the teams have started to work, as one big team. So that feels good. It feels like we're making progress. We will get there. One thing I did want to note quickly is that we had someone at the State of the Village, and I'm forgetting who, mentioned adult programming, and Will Glennon, the recreation director for the town, which is a position that we help fund, has started substantial adult programming. So if you're interested, check out the town's website and look for things there. There's some sort of arts and crafts type programming that sounded very cool. Like maybe so cool that I shouldn't be calling it arts and crafts. There's another, I'm sure there's a better word, but it sounded very interesting and compelling, worth checking out. They're also doing, pickleball and sort of and soccer in the gym and the usual sports stuff. Outside of that, the summer recreation program, they increased staff this year so that they could increase enrollments. They still have, 200 people on the wait list. So it's really, they're growing, I think, kind of as fast as Willis and Caitlin are kind of pushing as much as they can to increase capacity. And it's just, it's a program that we help fund. The cost is intentionally kept down, and that means people are very interested. Plus, I think it's a great program, right? So the combination of those things is a struggle to keep up with. But we have certainly rebounded in terms of COVID enrollments. Lastly, I want to note quickly that we have our Arbor Day celebration will be held next to the Gigantic Giant on April 29th at 10 a.m. We don't expect it to go for more than 2 hours. It will be a fairly brief thing. There will be a planting and some educational programming, and basically we're hoping to teach people how to evaluate the worth of their trees, so what their trees are doing from an environmental and financial perspective, and what they are worth in the most practical terms. So not accounting for things like aesthetics, but what they are actually doing functionally for you, which is, I think, very, very exciting. That planting will be a joint effort of the village's tree committee and the town's tree committee. So I'm also a little bit excited about that. I believe I will leave it there. I'm just realizing saying that out loud. Did we put the proclamation in next new business? Very good. I'll end there.
Okay. Keith is excused for police. I do have a police matter for executive session, which takes us to the treasurer's office. I did skip right over you. DPW, water, sewer, CPC, there's so many categories there.
Yeah.
I glossed right over
Well, I
it.
think that-
DPW, water, sewer, CPC, farmers market.
Hard not to take Wheel on this one. Nervous laughter. Anyhow, so on the CPCR front, it's a bit of a three-ring circus right now in a good way. In that we are working on short-term rental law. We had a draft that Guy reviewed and gave notes on. So the committee's responding to those comments. Hoping to have something, I don't know, maybe like next month, we'll see. We'll do some updates, get Guy's review. If we're kind of in a stable place, we'll maybe have something for this board to consider. Oh, sorry, I take it back. We're probably gonna have something like a public information meeting of some sort with the CDBR as well, because we know people are pretty interested in this particular piece, trying to get more feedback there before moving in here. So we're kind of dual tracking right now between that and commercial zoning, which we're dipping our toes into now. We're gonna kind of start with looking into what is in the current law, and kind of familiarize ourselves. It's very different from residential in that it's 4 different commercial or some sort of semi-commercial districts, and they're all slightly different in very different areas. And so I want to kind of get our heads wrapped around it first. And then meanwhile, residential zoning keeps moving on forward with our board. The public hearing for that is at our next meeting. And I saw that the notice just got posted on the website, and I put press releases out. And so we should be starting to hear with something in local papers. I was on WHCU about that last week, so starting to try to get the word out. No update on the farmers market, and on the DPW water sewer side. I did hear that we're hoping to get we should expect the sewer rate study by the end of the week. So once we've got that wrapped, we'll take a look at it, kind of dig into it. And see where that takes us. Our sewer law, we're going to begin secret process at our next meeting, which is a miss on my end. I did not realize we needed secret for that, so we'll be going through that process as well. And for anyone who might come upon this in the internet, the DPW has been out digging up water shutoffs wildly with wild abandon. I see many holes dug walking on my walk up Week Street down here. And that is because MRB is in town this week collecting GPS data for all of our infrastructure. To start building out a GPS database for us so that the DPW knows where water shutoffs are, instead of having to rely on someone who's been in the department for many decades and just happens to know where they are. So that would be good for us to get an update on. That is all I have.
We get the physical postings for the public hearings stapled up around town. We usually put one at the post office in the bank,
I can, do that tomorrow.
make sure.
I did for the budget, and so I just mentioned it in the journal today for the 24th, so we can do that.
Actually, one other thing I should mention, I know that there are some quotes floating around for new water meters. Remote grid water meters. So I don't have the details yet. I'm not ready to talk about it here, but just as a coming attraction, that's a piece that's coming down the road.
Okay, good. Now, treasurer's office.
Okay, the treasurer's office. Well, I'll be typing up a permissive referendum for that $900,000. I already have more sort of growth-oriented stuff to talk about. The treasurer's office is moving along in the general function. We now have the tentative budget approved, and that can get changed and posted on the web as approved instead of tentative. We'll do that. Does anyone have any specific questions of the treasurer's office?
We have a resolution.
We have a resolution. Is that under my agenda item? Okay, great. So we need to pass the resolution to remove Victoria Badalamenti as a signatory on the accounts, the bank accounts. The resolution is in the Dropbox.
And so I would entertain a motion to remove Victoria Badalamenti former treasurer, as a signatory on all of the Village of Trimsburg's bank accounts effective today, April 10, 2023.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Clerk's office then.
The clerk's office, local law number 2, the tax levy override has been submitted to the state. And then the local law number 3, then which becomes the Trimburg zoning law 2023, as we just addressed, have been noticed on the website news, which runs over to the Facebook page, and will run in the Ithaca Journal on Thursday the 15th for the public hearing jointly of the seeker review, and then comment on the local law on April 24th. We are in the process of streamlining even further the water billing. Can you imagine it? There is a way for the template to be printed directly on postcards right now. You may or may not know they're printed on 2 postcards on an 8.5 by 11 sheet with borders that you have to remove and then split in half. So this will be no short of an hour-and-a-half time-saving device. The template software can handle it. We just have to source the paper. I have sent out workplace training, sort of the sexual harassment and bloodborne pathogens and all of that. We do have links that can be done through a portal. That's gone, information on that has gone out to department heads today. The police have already completed their online portal training, so no longer do we have to all convene in one room on one day and watch videos. People can complete it in their own time. Again, huge time saving, money saving device that also allows employees to work it into their own calendar instead of being put out. So that will happen, and they'll be asked to complete that by June 1st. And then I will turn the rest of the information over to my fabulous deputy, who might tell you where she is with the Parks and Trails grant that we spoke about from the green team that requested that be submitted so they could do the pollinator berms. Jen's been working on that.
Right, so working on the grant writing for that, and I'll be giving you a letter that we can, that you need to do any edits. We need to still get a budget put together, but I think everything's pretty much on track, and
For April 16th submission, so
yeah, so next Monday, it's due, so yeah, I think everything's on track with that.
yeah, it's all you.
It's all you know, okay. Spring newsletter, I got the template from Ben, so I'm gonna start working on that. I'll be reaching out to different people to get, content. And, I'm glad you used Canva, because that's what I, so that makes a lot easier. In addition to that, also, worked on a welcome packet that I sent draft to Worden. It's really in early stages of, something that we can give, people that are new to the area, give them some additional information about how to be good citizens in T-Burg and what you do with your cash and all of the good things that are involved with living here. If you'd like to have a copy of the draft, I would love to show that if I was interested. And
Maybe we should put it in Dropbox and then people can comment on it there. Again, it's Jen's first pass at a draft. I'm not sure where it's had a chance to even comment.
yeah,
Yeah, she just completed that next Tuesday or last Tuesday.
yeah. Other than that, we've been just trying to get a handle on some of the records and.
Just have a super great admin time.
Yeah.
We aren't gonna bore you with like all the other reports we found we could do that are time saving devices, but there's been lots of jumping up and down.
We just start.
Yeah. Questions for the clerk or the deputy clerk?
Okay, well, thank you. Any other old business? Not listed. Okay, under new business, we do have an Arbor Day proclamation, which I will go ahead and read. Whereas trees are essential to a healthy environment, both globally and within the village, and whereas trees are an invaluable resource and provide tangible benefits to village residents, businesses, homeowners, and visitors, and whereas the social, economic, and environmental benefits of trees in the village cannot be overstated, and whereas it is important to celebrate respect, and protect the natural, environmental, and historic beauty of our village. Now therefore, I do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 to be Arbor Day in the village of Trumansburg. And further, that all are encouraged to take time today or in the future to appreciate the beauty of trees both in the village and elsewhere. And further, that any who have the means are also encouraged to plant a tree to ensure that future generations may share in the many gifts offered by our community's forests. And further, all are invited to join our town and village tree committees for a community tree planting next to the Taganic Giant across from the farmers market on April 29th, 2023 at 10 a.m. And Jessica, if you would print that for me, I will sign it tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure that's in the calendar. A.m.
Okay.
Saturday. Okay. And our second item of new business is a resolution. Speaking of EMS and things being very expensive, this is substantially similar to a resolution that we adopted almost 2 years ago. And I believe the county legislature was going to take this up at their meeting last week, and all the Tompkins County municipalities are being encouraged to adopt something similar. And then hopefully we can get other counties and other municipalities to join in. So I'll read this quickly as well. Whereas volunteer fire and EMS services in rural New York State have been under pressure for many years, ongoing declining volunteerism rates, which leads to the closure of departments, which leads to the expansion of coverage areas for nearby agencies, which themselves struggle with staffing in an environment of ever increasing costs. And whereas efforts to increase volunteerism, particularly in EMS, while noble, are neither sustainable nor effective enough to make a meaningful long-term impact. And whereas as a result of these circumstances, many municipalities have been forced to implement paid EMS departments, contract for services with other paid departments, or do without timely EMS coverage for their residents. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the critical nature of EMS services, particularly in rural areas where EMS response is the primary source of frontline emergency healthcare to millions of New York residents. And whereas as a subset of the healthcare field, annual EMS cost increases strain the budgets of rural towns and villages who are nevertheless morally and ethically obligated to provide these services to their constituents. And whereas Article 17, Section 3 of the New York State Constitution states that, quote, the protection and promotion of the health of the inhabitants of the state are matters of public concern, and provision therefore shall be made by the state and by such of its subdivisions and in such manner and by such means as the legislature shall from time to time determine, end quote. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Trumansburg fully supports Assembly Bill A01091 and companion Senate Bill S01852, which would create a CHIPS-style state funding subsidy for municipalities who operate or contract with public and not-for-profit EMS agencies. And be it further resolved that copies of this resolution shall be forwarded to the Tompkins County Legislature, Assemblymember Kellis, Senator Webb, Assembly Speaker Heastie, Senate Majority Leader Stewart Cousins, and Governor Hochul. And I would so move.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Does this mean there is continued hope? Is the timing of this, I assume, is not random?
No, the bills have been introduced. There are more co-signers on the Assembly bill than were last year. I talked to Assemblymember Kellis about it last week, and she said that there's a fair bit of support. But we need a lot of municipalities to pass resolutions like this around the state. And ideally, we also need the IAFF to stop trying to block it, or at least to become neutral on the topic.
Well, and then interestingly, the task force maybe acts as a a deferral mechanism to some degree.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things you just gotta keep pushing until people either aren't willing to push anymore or it gets pushed through there's lots of interesting machinations at the state level with the office of what's Mukika's department, the Office of Budget doesn't like this bill because it would become part of the operational budget, which they don't like to increase, they like to avoid increasing. So we'll continue to have the conversation. Yeah.
Any other notice, there's two Dems and a Republican sponsoring it in the Senate, which is nice to see something crossing the aisle there.
Yep. Any other questions or comments?
Asked Nikon picked it up as part of their like legislative push, which I think feels substantial.
That means something.
And NICOM and NISAC, the Association of Counties, are supportive. They haven't taken the step of sending blast emails to electeds and saying, please sign on to this. That's kind of the next big step. If they were to do that, that might have an impact. But
Wasn't it a NICOM conference where you presented last year? Wasn't it NICOM sponsored?
and this year on their schedule, there's nothing to do with fire or EMSL.
Oh, my gosh.
But if they're putting it out, I mean, that feels like an escalation to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, it just feels like one of those, it's a long campaign.
Yeah.
and it could happen faster.
It's certainly happening faster, but we'll keep pushing. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none and all in favor of adopting the resolution as presented, please say aye. Any opposed? Jess, if you could print, seal and certify that.
Yes.
Right,
Connect. Which takes us to the public comment period. Seeing no members of the public, unless Anne has anything she wants to jump in and add. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a couple of personal matters.
So moved.
so. Really EMS and police.
Please, yes, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.